If we want to win big with teens, we must bring them in as tweens.
Isn't it really funny, though, that they've spent years obliterating people's attention spans to get more and more, short form content out, and then they're like, people won't pay attention to our video app where they have to create it themselves.
Disney announced they were going to invest in $1 billion, but unfortunately for them, they decided to shelve Sora 2. This is one plaintiff when you have upwards of 1,500 waiting in the wings. Welcome to the Actor's Guide to the End of the World podcast, where we talk about acting in Hollywood in a way people understand. I'm Ikon Song, and this is
Rían Sheehy Kelly.
What's up, buddy?
As you well know, I am good. I am sore from rock climbing.
Oh,
I went rock climbing yesterday for the first time, and it was magic.
nice. Follow us wherever you find your podcast at Actors Guide Podcast. We're on all social media at Actors Guide Podcast.
Now, a quick word from our sponsor.
Is craft services the only time you eat a decent meal?
Do you feel a little ashamed walking off set with fistfuls of brisket?
Meet Crafty Bag, the stylish and environmentally conscious way to steal food from set.
There are no limits with Crafty Bag. You can go from fig Newtons to filet mignon.
Now comes in green screen. Crafty Bag is not waterproof. Spillage may occur. All right, let's get into it. On the note of social media, YouTube and Meta are in the news, everyone. A jury awarded damages for a plaintiff in LA, $6 million, citing that those platforms were dangerous and addictive. We've talked about how addictive social media is in the past and so on, and then you kind of wonder what's the responsibility of the users versus the company. This is pretty huge because they actually won when so many corporations skirt by with these lawsuits, and they kind of get by without paying taxes and so on and so forth. They actually won. They're saying that this might be the start of a cascade of more lawsuits. From this testimony, the one quote that is kind of crazy, according to a document from Meta, if we want to win big with teens, we must bring them in as tweens. That's kind of the most telling one, where, hey, guys, I mean, it's one thing to run a business where you want to profit off of people's attention and how much they spend. That being said, the age limit for being on these platforms is around 13. They're doing studies on, getting 11-year-olds addicted and how young these people have been on it. The plaintiff, she started YouTube at 6, Instagram at 9, and now she's 20 years old, suffered through depression, body dysmorphia, suicidal thoughts. And what the jury found, the companies knew it was dangerous and they didn't warn anyone. And this is a danger to children.
It's crazy. I mean, it definitely is. There's no question. It's like cigarettes. Like, everybody knew they were addictive, no matter how many lawsuits they brought against them. You know what I mean? Everybody knows they're addictive, and that's awful. That that's the result of it in anyone. But like, what do you think is the responsibility of these companies to not make it addictive? I mean, these are private companies. Like, they. Because you don't have to use it. It's not a requirement. You don't have to be on social media. Now, I understand that's a very easy thing to say, and like it's so ubiquitous that it's very hard to not be on social media. But why do they have to not make it addictive? I do understand that if they say the age is 13 and they target 11-year-olds, that's a real problem, because then they're contravening their own rules. And that's pretty unethical to target children anyway. But
I think that's kind of like the crux of it. The plaintiff was on social media all day from the age of 6. It's one thing for you and me to be like average adults. Like, we admit, hey, it's really hard to get off social media.
Absolutely.
And then when you talk about children, now obviously we can talk about parenting. We can talk about all this different weaves and the roots of it, which makes it more complicated. But you're completely right. I think tobacco is a perfect. They're comparing this to when big tobacco kind of first took the hit. They need warning labels. What this could be the start of is they're probably going to need to do their business differently how they design their algorithm, and then also what kind of warning labels and restrictions are you going to put on these products. Now, this is drastically going to change their business. And for a while, they were skating around and they're doing, like, they had, I don't know whether it was a study or not, but they already knew that 11-year-olds were 4 times more likely to get hooked onto the platform. So they already had all this data on 11-year-olds, yet the age restriction is 13. So I think a lot of it's going to be internal. Maybe there's going to be more parental guide restrictions on Facebook. Maybe there's going to be more censorship, blocking of videos. But this might drastically change their business, and for better.
Yeah, I hope it does. I mean,
well, I guess buying cigarettes actually would be harder because there's an age limit to buy cigarettes if you go into 7-Eleven. There is a warning label in all the packaging. And then for cigarettes, I believe there's no cigarette TV ads, right? And I believe even billboards, there's a restriction on cigarette billboards. So there's definitely been a reckoning of how they can advertise.
But it didn't stop me starting smoking.
Without a doubt, YouTube and Google are going to appeal this. It says here, a Google spokesperson, they never believed that YouTube was a social media site. A Meta spokesperson said, teen mental health is profoundly complex and cannot be linked to a single app. They're going to appeal. That being said, this plaintiff did win this case. This is a step in the right direction. And like you were saying, as far as the development of restrictions on cigarettes, that happened over many, many years.
Yeah.
And now cigarettes are kind of a little taboo and you can't smoke them in restaurants. And now the evolution is vaping and all that stuff. So these things do take their course. That being said, we might see the slow shift of how social media and YouTube, which are huge and booming, are going to be changing their business. So this is huge. This is great for young people. This is great for maybe everyone, to be honest, because we can all admit how addictive it is.
Absolutely. I mean, I struggle with it. I don't know anybody who doesn't struggle with, some kind of addiction to their phone or social media, because it's designed that way. It's designed to keep you
hooked
coming back and coming back and coming back and reinforcing the sort of little dopamine hits of likes and engagement and algorithms. And but I think, just to crudely drag this back towards acting, I think it's responsible for how people watch things today. I think social media is responsible for a lot of what we see today because of I think it's had a massive effect on society at large, but also in terms of how people watch entertainment and what entertainment has become. I think social media more than anything has driven that trend towards shorter and shorter forms, instant hits, people not paying attention for longer periods of time. The way, we see it the way that streaming services and companies are responding to it. They're creating content like this, the whole debate about second screen content but the way things are being structured now reflects the effects of social media. So anything that forces those companies to be accountable and to change, I think is great.
You could hear this case and you're like, oh, $6 million. That's literally pocket change for YouTube and Meta. This is one plaintiff. And in California, when you have upwards of 1,500 and 1,600 waiting in the wings of similar stories of young people wanting to file damages against these social media platforms. So you start to calculate that, that's going to be a big hit to YouTube and Meta. And then you can add in school districts. There are school districts, some school districts across the country are banning phones from schools. Yeah. So you add school districts, and some school districts might be suing, and those are thousands of students each. So you start to see the money roll in, and this is not going to be ignored by these huge companies.
Yeah.
There you go. Segueing to another, and I'm going to try to hide my excitement for this. So OpenAI just announced...
Because you usually have such an easy time doing that.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's a good point. OpenAI is shelving Sora 2.
Just a video app.
You put in a description and will come up with super realistic videos of yourself or famous figures. And it could really just spit out anything and you just see it go. And it's essentially AI Slop. That was kind of like their big platform that they were pushing. It was essentially going to be social media. You could share videos of yourself. And Disney announced they were going to incorporate and do a collaboration with Sora 2 and put these type of videos on their platform in the next year. And they were going to invest in $1 billion. You would be able to use Disney characters to spit out AI Slop. But unfortunately for them, they decided to shelve Sora 2.
That's mental. So they went, we'll give you $1 billion, and they went, no, we're just gonna wrap it up. Why was that?
Yeah, there's a couple things here. And when you said they, I just want to make it clear. OpenAI pulled the plug, and so the investment of Disney just goes along with it. So OpenAI was OpenAI's decision. It's not Disney that pulled out first. Yeah. There's the incredible amount of money that it costs to run Sora 2. Apparently, estimate was $15 million a day to run. So, we never really touched on that data point, but if you so wondered, it's one thing to be like, okay, guys, we got a lot of really smart people churning out this garbage, but $15 million a day, as opposed to curing cancer, there's a lot of speculation, but if we're going to think big picture about AI, this is a signal. This is one little data point of this ongoing trend of Hollywood. Is it going to incorporate AI more? Is it not? And you brought this up fairly over the time of us talking about AI. You're basically like, what's the point of all this stuff? And I think they're realizing what is the point of all this stuff. So you have all this investment, and these tech companies, they want to act fast, experiment, break things, and find what the next stage of this incredible technology is. They spent a lot of time, they spent a lot of money on it, and maybe they didn't want to get into a war with DeepSeek 2 or the new fanciest AI models for a bunch of AI slop. There's that. Initially, a lot of people downloaded the app, but then retention did not stick. Were people using it? Was it a useless thing or just a fad? All these things were probably part of it. And then you have on top of it Hollywood, where CAA and Hollywood called them out and said that they were infringing on copyright and likeness. And you had Hollywood pushing back. So all of these things kind of result in this. And they're like, hey, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. And maybe we shelve this earlier than later.
Isn't it really funny, though, that they've spent years obliterating people's attention spans to get more and more, short form content out. And then they're like, people won't pay attention to our video app where they have to create it themselves. Which is kind of a great point. Mental.
I don't want to be, too celebratory here, but I think this is a big win for humanity. So that's our word around town, everyone.
And we'll never talk about AI again.
Yeah. So this week we're going to talk about some hot topics that came around in our worlds. Frequently asked questions that I hear a lot of actors asking, some conversations that you and I had, just practical things that are happening in our industry. And not to mention, I'm hearing crazy things on social media. I mean, we've been doing this for over a year, and I figured, hey, we might as well be useful. So this is our first FAQ segment. Let's just get right into it, because we had a conversation. You want to talk about managers, cut fees, commissions, agent managers. Let's just talk about the new trends in that first to start off.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know a lot about that, to be honest.
That's a good place to start. There's no judgment over one of the benefits when we're at Leslie Kahn, where we study. There's an element of class if you're in certain ongoings that there's share time. We're share time in the beginning class where you get to talk about your lives. You get to talk with other actors in a safe environment, and you hear about what's going on. And it's such a rare, because we're so isolated these days. It's such a, it's really a gift, because not until I'm having conversations with other actors do I realize, oh, wait, that's happening? And so it's nice to be able to check in every so often. So let's just talk about agents and managers real quick. For those not in the industry, just really loosely, agents and managers are your rep. These days, especially with our shrinking industry, agents and managers, they might do the same job. They try to get you an audition. They submit on platforms trying to get you auditions. There are certain restrictions that agents have to, or most agents have to agree to, versus managers where their contracts can be anything. Agents in America are, a lot of them are SAG-AFTRA franchised, which is a certification. There's regulations there by the union, which a lot of people overlook how important that is. So your agent can give you a SAG-AFTRA contract that's standard. A manager can literally do any contract that they want, which gives them a little more leeway. So that's the difference between agents and managers. Managers, a lot of times managers have, they're led to be, people believe that managers are a little more hands-on. They kind of like help you along as far as guidance, versus agents are really just about trying to get the next job. And historically, managers always used to take a bigger fee. Agents was standard 10%, okay, standard 10%. And then managers, historically 15%. And this is where the conversation starts. So go ahead. What
I was going to say, like,
hearing?
the manager thing, because, in any market that I've been in before LA, managers were not standard. They're not standard in Ireland. Yeah. They're not standard in Chicago. So LA is a place where they, I think they're most prevalent. LA and New York, I would say. There isn't really, I guess, a need for them in the same way, because they operate in a kind of a gray area in some ways, because they technically can't procure you employment. They don't submit you on jobs technically, right?
That's a great point. Well, I've had a manager for years.
So tell me about the experience of that.
You're right. Let's just start with New York and LA. The bigger markets, you would find more managers because there's more actors. Historically, there was more actors. There's more talent. But when it comes down to it, it's all relative. Personally, for me, I love my manager. I still do. I love my manager. It's great for newer talent. And when it comes down to it, depending on the market, I always thought finding a manager was a little easier than finding an agent, because they would have a little more on their clients, a little bigger of a client base, and they are a little more hands-on. In this day and age with our industry, I don't see too much of a difference between the two. And you really want to find a rep that believes in you and is going to get you work. And by the way, agents and managers are leaving the business. So it's in this conversation, it's easy to have really high standards to be like, well, this person's not working for me. I need a change, versus, hey, the industry is pretty slow right now. Maybe it's not the manager, and we just need to get through these lean times. So there's always that conversation.
Yeah.
I'm really all in favor for someone who's going to get you work. It doesn't matter how big, fancy their name is. And ideally, they're using their connections to get you work, whether it's through submissions or emails and their connections over the years with casting directors. As far as the nuts and bolts, if you're with an agent who's charging more than 10%, I don't want to exaggerate. If it's more than 10%, that might be a red flag. Now, there might be some nuance there, but agents should be taking 10%, and they should only be taking 10% of jobs you book. This is not one of those things where you pay them monthly. Any of those things technically are illegal, okay? Manager, I have no problem, and my manager cut was 15%, okay?
Of your gross income.
Yeah, exactly. Gross income. Yeah. And that was fine. And it was more than my agent. That being said, a manager, there's no restrictions as far as what contracts they can write up. The other thing I was saying as far as trends, and I know that we're getting really into the weeds here, but this is actually really applicable to a lot of actors. There's a lot of nuances when we talk about contracts. The myth was, well, you have to be careful with managers because they'll take 15% off of everything. Your t-shirt sales, your blah, blah, blah. You're like, that was a myth
Do you
that
sell a lot of
maybe
t-shirts?
was. Yeah, exactly. Tons. No one touches my t-shirt sales. It depends on the contract that you have with this rep. My manager didn't touch commercials. My manager did not take 15% of commercials. That would be a drastically different relationship. My manager never signed and doesn't sign non-union talent. These are all the things where it's so individual. So when I hear, like, I mean, you heard things like managers could take 20%, managers could take 10%. I heard someone tell me their agent was taking 20%. I'm like, whoa. There's so many things that might be a nuance to the contract, but there are a few clear principles that, hey, this might be a red flag and you might need to check it out. Anyway, that was my manager's agreement, which was fair and good because I was also making a lot of commercial money. And also, they didn't work in commercials. Why would they take 15%? The other trend that we're seeing right now because of the prevalence, that's right, the prevalence of verticals, the prevalence of non-union commercials. There's such a trend, and this is for a lot of the actors here in the States, and there's so much non-union work, and this is no judgment, but this is a trend of where our industry is. There's so much non-union work, and I'll speak about commercials primarily. Some of the largest agencies in the industry actually have in their contracts 20% off your cut for non-union commercials. SAG-AFTRA agencies, yet they can get by charging non-union actors anything they want because it's non-union. The middle class actor is the commercial world. This is just a small indication of where our trend's going. There's so much money for non-union work. Well, here's the thing. Okay, let's talk about verticals then. On that note, there's so much money for verticals and non-union work that if you hear an agent taking 20% of your cut, you probably will want to ask them, are you submitting and working with a lot of actors who are you actively getting people work in verticals? And that's probably the case. There's so much non-union work that a lot of agents and managers can charge whatever they want, but a lot of agents will charge a bigger fee for non-union work. That's never been a thing. These trends are becoming so prevalent where what used to be a real major red flag is probably just normal. I have non-union actors bringing up to me all the time different commission fees that agents are taking, and I'm not the one saying that they're red flags and you need to report this person. I'm just saying that I'm more like, wow, I can't believe this is happening. And when you start looking at your industry as a business, so let's put in real numbers. Say you do a $1,500 non-union buyout. You're giving 20%, so that's $300 gone. That's $300 that you're giving to your agent, and then half of it is gone for taxes. So $1,500, that half of $1,500 is $750. So $1,500 buyout, you'll walk away with $450. So just put those things in perspective. There's a lot of money out there. So you're walking away with around $450 from a $1,500 buyout. This is not an indictment on non-union commercial acting. That being said, I have a lot of non-union actors coming to me. They're like, wow, we used to make money back in the day. I don't even know what's the point of being non-union anymore. And these are, to be fair, these are not newer actors. These are actors who have been doing the grind for a long time, where this is the age-old thing of what we've always been talking about, where the industry is shrinking and the actors are kind of getting pinched out.
But because they have to make money by volume then, because it is
exactly
less money.
And that's basically our gig economy, and basically Netflix contracts are basically doing buyouts. And that's why we're fighting for residuals, because we're working a gig economy. If an agent, whether they're SAG franchised or manager or not, it is a negotiation. Let's say you're a big content creator or you're a big TV producer or you make YouTube money. Someone hands you a contract saying, I want 15% of all your grosses from your TV show or your digital presence. You can easily say, no, and adjust the contract. So actors know that they have that power and they have that choice. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What I was going to say is what it does indicate is just, if you're not in the industry, there's a lot of expense associated with being an actor. Like if you're successful enough, you're giving away 10% to your agent, you're giving away 10 to 15% to a manager. You also have a lawyer probably, so there's another percentage of work there. And then all the other expenses like, headshots and subscriptions and classes and all that stuff. And then most of the work you do is for free. So I think that, for someone not in the industry, it's something to just, understand that there's a ton of expense associated with staying in this job. And that's why a lot of people work, different side jobs and to keep it going. So I just, it's part of that conversation. I saw an actor recently talking about verticals and student films and stuff, and they said those are the things you should do until you don't have to anymore. And they weren't specifically.
Oh yeah,
talking about verticals,
I saw the video too.
Yeah, but I think that's right. Like if if you want on-set experience and student films, I've had some great experiences with student films, and I've made some wonderful friendships and relationships through doing those things. I don't know if verticals work the same way. I presume they do in some sense, but these are all things to get experience, and the same with non-union commercials. I think people do them until they don't have to anymore, or until they're a union member and they can't do them anymore. It's
Yeah, that's a great point. The mind-boggling thing is that I talked to non-union actors who did not realize what you just said. And I think for a period of time, there was a prevalence of non-union money and non-union commercials where someone actually said, oh, well, I don't really see the value of going to the union yet, and I'm going to keep making non-union commercial money. And now agents are taking 20%, and now people are having that realization when I'm like, well, let's talk about this whole submission thing. There's so much talk about how many submissions get seen. I had an actor ask me this. How many submissions get seen by for one role? There's so much going on social media from casting directors, actors, acting coaches. and here's the thing. It's like, it's just nice to talk to a human being where we can have, hey, there's sometimes nuance as opposed to every clickbait, rage bait, actor bait thing on social media. That being said, there's a lot of great information. How do we parse all that?
So there's a casting director on, and this goes back to the conversation of social media and how we consume it and how it's, it's a part of that conversation, because there's a lot of people on social media telling you things, and a lot of those people are selling that advice, because a lot of them have courses and they have, but there are a lot of people selling advice on social media as their primary form of selling that advice, of hooking people in and getting them to buy their courses. And I'm not saying any of those courses are good or bad. I'm not making a comment on that. But this is a lot of what comes up on my feed and this casting director was talking about the conversation of how many seconds casting directors watch our audition tapes for. And this casting director was saying, sure, if you watch it for 10 seconds or 3 seconds or 5 seconds, it's not helpful to actors. It's not a helpful conversation. Now, I don't know.
I didn't realize that's where you're going with this.
Well, this is what kicked off the 2000 submissions thing. This is what started it. This casting director talked about, yeah, sure, okay, that's fine if that's what you do, but it's not helpful to actors because it doesn't help us do our jobs. Now, that's debatable. I don't know. If you know that you need to nail it within the first 10 seconds, that might change your approach. I think one of the things they talked about was it can lead to actors trying to do something drastic in the first few seconds that's to get your attention, which is not necessarily accurate to the script or the character, and that's damaging. I think their take on this was that it puts a lot of pressure on actors that is unnecessary. Now, that's a debate you could have back and forth. Another former casting director, right? Jen Rudolph is a former casting director? Yeah. Another former casting director came out and trashed this opinion, saying that if you get 2,000 submissions for a role, you're not watching more than the first few seconds. The original casting director shot back and said, I would never see 2,000 people for a role. I would never take 2,000 submissions for a role. I would take maybe 500 or maybe 200, and I would be more targeted and more directed, and made the point that if you're seeing 2,000 people, you're not doing your job properly. because you couldn't possibly watch all of those things. And then went on to kind of delve into it a bit further and talk about the nuances of casting specific roles in terms of region, in terms of special skills, all different types of things. But it leads to this broader conversation of how the industry has changed. And we kind of touched on this at the beginning of like, the fact that someone is talking about seeing 2,000 people for a role is a little bit alarming. You know what I mean? Because I think pre-pandemic or whatever the current iteration of how business is done here now, there would maybe be what? 30 people for a role? 10 to 15 people for a role?
Are you talking about back in the day before self-tapes?
Yeah, brought into a room to audition for a specific role for a TV show or movie.
No, I'd probably say a little more than that.
Yeah,
depending on the role. Yeah, we're talking about a general co-star. Okay. Let's take a step back because that's good. Let's just chomp on that real quick. I just need clarification here because you know these videos better than I do. Just to be clear, when we're talking about this, submissions is different than self-tape auditions. So when someone says 2,000 submissions, you can get all the submissions you want. She's not saying... Now, that's not the same as 2,000 self-tape requests. Like, you can't control how many submissions you get. Yeah, I get if you're a non-union film and you're submitting on Actors Access. Now, I know that we're getting so into the weeds here. And but this is how actors talk, and this is kind of valid because I have these conversations so rarely. If you are casting a non-union film and open to every non-union actor in the country, you will get a bajillion number of submissions because there's a lot of actors, some really good ones, some experienced ones that fit your role. Some ones, actors are just submitting to everything. And so there's so much nuance to the project, the region. What are you casting a TV show for Nickelodeon versus Breaking Bad? And so I just want to clarify this. When we're talking about it, you can receive a lot of submissions. A casting director will send out a certain amount of self-tape requests for a certain role. Now, if we're going to say a co-star role is 2 lines on The Office. A co-star role is going to be a very simple role where it's like there's not a lot of character development and it's going to be a lot of different types could be seen. And that might be a larger pool than say, I need the series regular lead that might be Steve Carell. So there's nuances to roles, but sure, we're going to try to be specific about this. And also, if I'm looking for a specialty thing like, hey, he needs to be a hang glider who's 7'5" with red hair, that's also a nuance. So go ahead.
The original casting director, the original video that sparked this out, a casting director said, auditions aren't social media ads. And the other former casting director said she's wrong. And they got into a bit of a back and forth about submissions and how many self-tapes and how much of those self-tapes they watch.
Oh, okay. So they compared auditions to social media. Okay.
Yeah. It ended up in quite a friendly resolution. Okay. So it was 2,000 tape.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
so in this conversation, 2,000 tapes, you're fighting to get seen amongst 2,000 tapes. And that's the importance of the first 3 seconds or whatever. And also to caveat, like we have to be fair here. We did talk about the whole 3-second thing. We drastically changed our mind about the whole controversy. We're not going to get into the 3-second controversy there because I think all the actors have moved on from it. So that being said, this marketing idea that, hey, you're trying to get attention, 2,000 tapes, this is who you're fighting against. I agree with the casting director who shot back because she made a great point saying, if you're taking 2,000 self-tapes for one role, regardless of what the TV show is, you might want to be better at your job.
So it's a back and forth, and when these things happen, I think the benefit of them is they bring up a sort of a wider debate for actors. At the end of the day, it's 2 people's opinions, And I think everybody probably does their job slightly differently. So I don't think it's that. I don't think it means a whole lot for actors other than to examine what our job is. And I will say, like, I understand where people get resentful when they see videos like this and they say, we only watch the first 3 seconds or 4 seconds or 10 seconds, but they've just got 8 pages of dialogue to learn, to prep, to shoot, to find a reader, to get set up, to do the self-tape, to get it in on time by a deadline. I think it's the feeling of underappreciation that really is a touch point for people where they just, it sparks them up. But again, I think it really doesn't matter too much because it's something that's out of our control. I think what is in our control is how prepared we are, how connected we are.
This idea of a data or numbers orgy, people get lost in data all they want.
They do.
And next thing you know, I don't know, is that an arm or an elbow? And you give me all these numbers, I have no idea what to do with it. That being said, I know a lot of actors who get benefit out of that. So I'll try to wrap this number thing. I just had an actor talk to me about this conversation. And they go, well, if you think about how many actors will get seen for a role, what happens when you get pinned? And just imagine all the times that you get called back from the same casting office. And the point that they were extrapolating is, that is such a victory. I don't care whether it's 200 people. I don't care whether it's 2,000. In this day and age, if you can get called back by the same casting director or get an avail check or get pinned, what a victory that is.
Absolutely.
And that's the most important thing out of all this conversation, because I like someone asked me that out of the blue and I was like, "What? How'd you think about this with that whole video?" And that's the extrapolation that they got, is regardless of how many numbers, there are a lot of actors and there's a lot of people who want to work. And I was one of the few that, hey, this guy might be a fit for the role.
I love that.
And I think that was a really good reminder for him. And it's also a good reminder for me, because here we are in this void of self-tapes, and let's not forget the victories. Chalk them up, save the email, print it out, put it on your wall.
Tattoo it on your body.
Yeah, exactly. Just imagine how many breakdowns I have tattooed on my lower back.
So many.
So, yeah,
before you say that, I just want to say, like, the two things that I can take from that are positives for me or that are nice reminders is, one, my moment before has to be really strong in every tape. I have to be dropped in and have a really strong moment before, which helps me because I can't warm up to it as the tape continues. You know what I mean? I can't sort of start lukewarm and find it sort of halfway through. Also, I have a tendency to agonize over little moments in tapes when I'm choosing between 1 or 2 or 3 tapes, and it might be towards the end of a 3-minute scene. It's a good reminder to not be so precious about that, because realistically, that, one, that's probably, if I haven't hit it from the beginning, that's never going to get watched anyway. And 2, I have a friend who is a very good actor who works a lot, and he never does more than 3 takes. Once he gets all the way through, that counts as 1. And because he says that they're not materially different. They're not substantially different enough from each other that it's worth doing 10 or 20 or 40 takes and agonizing over the differences.
Yeah, the self-tape is not Shawshank Redemption. As much as we would believe it, want to believe it, but that's a great point.
So those 3 things: the win, if you do get an avail check or a pin or whatever, or called back or any feedback at all, that's huge. And those other 2 things, strong moment before, don't worry about don't agonize over little choices. That helps me. So that's ultimately my takeaway from this back and forth and this conversation is that just take what you can from it and use it as inspiration to kind of, guide you and push you forward.
Yeah. All right, cool. So that's our FAQs, everyone. Hot questions. Forget about Reddit. This was a very lively conversation on social media, but hope that helps. And we're just trying to make sense of this world that we live in. So hidden gems.
Hidden gems. I'm going to fire out mine real quick because I went climbing for the first time in my life yesterday.
Yeah, that's fun.
I just want to give a shout out to Hollywood Boulders in Hollywood. which was great. They were very friendly. And I went with a friend of mine who goes there a lot. I went with two friends of mine. One who was a first-time climber like me, and another friend of mine, and she climbs quite a bit. And it was class. And they were very friendly, and it was very welcoming, and I really like climbing. So I'm probably just going to do a free solo on the next giant...
Yeah, down Everest.
Mountain/cliff that I can find. Yep. Yep.
Oh, that's awesome. I heard good things about Hollywood boulders. So any fears, any takeaways, any expectations?
Of climbing?
Yeah, as a first timer.
Do you know, I was lucky that I had someone there with me who's a bit more experienced, and she was able to kind of give me some of the technique of it. And I think the tendency is to like muscle your way up it, but like hanging my arms, Jesus, even put my arms up there hurts. Like using your arms to hang and using the least amount of energy and effort, and you know, to kind of stay on it and get to the next part was crucial. But it was really enjoyable. It's like a little puzzle. Do you know what I loved about it is like your focus is so singular, which is like, you know, it's like boxing or martial arts or something where it's like
meditative.
It is kind of, because you don't have any, you have one goal and you can't really be distracted from that. You're sort of locked into that. I just have to get to the next thing, the next bit. So I really appreciated that, because I think my brain has a tendency to bounce around the world. So it's nice to have a little singular focus.
That's
So there
great.
you go.
So I teased my hidden gem a little bit, and it's just it's timely. I just saw this screening of this film. It just released this past week. It is about AI. It's called The AI Doc, or How I Became an Apocalyptimist. Just want to let that name, because that name is so kind of spot on. How I Became an Apocalyptimist. Now, I know that everyone's, you know, like we said, kind of boggled by this whole AI talk. This AI documentary, it was making the rounds, but it's officially in theaters, and it was produced by one of the directors of Everything Everywhere All at Once. So it has a lot of backing as far as these are people from the Hollywood community, but really, how do you navigate this conversation? Anyway, we touched a little bit on it earlier, but there's so many ways that we could talk about, well, it could save the world, yet it can also destroy our world. There were so many large scoping questions. I thought this documentary did it superbly. I was way exceeding my expectations because I thought I was going to be tired of it. It asked really deep questions as far as a human being on this earth, something as basic as, should we be okay with having kids right now? The document, by the way, the director, I know that's really a hard shot. The director was literally about to have his first child, and he was interviewing the experts of the AI world, top execs from Google. Sam Altman actually agreed to an interview, and Sam Altman of OpenAI, he's in this documentary. So asking the most poignant questions and most core questions, and then somehow maintaining a little optimism. I can't imagine anyone navigating this better. So if you're curious, even just wondering what to do about this whole AI conversation, that film will be in theaters now. So check it out, the AI doc. It's
Cool.
Easy to remember. That's the hidden gem, everyone.
That isn't in a very specific location where if you don't live there is inaccessible to you, like Hollywood bowlers, where if you don't live in it, yours is accessible. Mine is a bit more niche.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, to be honest, you can find a rock climbing gym in any major city.
Yeah, just go rock climbing. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, just go rock climbing.
Climb
The hidden gem is rock
climb a
climbing,
telephone
really.
pole. Climb over a fence.
All right. Well, that's our show, everyone. Have a great one. See you next time.
See you next week.